Hi, and welcome to Attention. I was going to release the second video I had planned in regard to a more in-depth look at some of the ideas found in Octavia Butler's work, but it has been much busier than expected. So I thought of doing a poetry analysis, which is something I have yet to do on this channel. We'll take a look at one of America's most highly regarded poets of her time, Gwendolyn Brooks, and her well-known poem, We Real Cool. A poem she had written in 1959 and the following year published in a collection of poems in 1960 titled The Bean Eaters. Apart from being the first African-American woman to hold the position of being a poet consultant to the Library of Congress, Gwendolyn Brooks was also the first African-American to receive the Pulitzer Prize for poetry. Her early works of poetry comprised of characterizations of urban, everyday life of the average African-American. And by 1967, her poetry took on a less interpretive style and contained more focused and specific themes, particularly themes involving politics and social unrest. These were written to invoke within the reader a more conscious understanding of racial injustice. She began to write in more free verse style to broaden her audience outside of academia, and adopted a dialect common to the average citizen. In the 1970s, she would teach at multiple colleges and universities while continuing to write poetry. She pursued to lecture in public places such as bar rooms and lounges, and in 1990 the Chicago State University established the Gwendolyn Brooks Center on its campus. She passed away at age 83 on December 3rd, 2000. Now, before we get into analyzing her poem, here's a reading that she gave in 1963 of We Real Cool.
This poem has been banned here and there because of the word jazz, which some people have considered a sexual reference. That was not my intention, though I have no objection if it helps anybody. But I was thinking of music. The pool players, 7 at the Golden Shovel. We real cool, we left school, we learn late, we strike straight, we sing, sin, we then gin, we jazz June, we die soon.
Gwendolyn Brooks wrote this poem after passing by a tavern or pool hall and seeing a group of boys playing pool at hours in which she believed they were supposed to be in school. And as she put it, instead of asking why these young boys were not at school or where it is they should have been, she thought to herself, I wonder how they feel about themselves. She wondered to herself if these boys had felt that they were breaking a social norm as a way to stand up against the establishment. The speaker of this poem is one that does not disassociate with the boys and through their perspective speaks for them not critically but poses observations connected to their actions, all in which suggests the boys to be rebellious youths. This theme is carried out throughout the collection of poems in which We Real Cool is taken. Characterizing much of the common residents of the Chicago South Side, Brooks does not shy away from the growing political tensions, the racial discrimination, educational integration, and the rise of the civil rights movements of her time. All of these themes are prevalent within the collection and written in free verse, showing a drastic turn in her writing style as she became more conscious of the social climate. Within only a span of 24 words, Brooks captures a glimpse of urban life within a group of young adults who share a watered-down bottle of gin while shooting a game of pool. This scene takes a common occurrence in the urban life of 1950 Chicago and brings it to the front, where the more comfortable classes would typically view the lives of those in the inner city from a distance. often under a romanticized lens perpetuated by pop culture, or a media that often shielded the reality of the less fortunate class. The opening of the poem mentions the setting without any description of the pool hall in which Brooks passes. The name of the pool hall, the Golden Shovel, would have been an unknown, dingy bar in which would have been associated with a lifestyle reserved for those whose place in society tends to be overlooked. By leaving the description of the pool hall out of the poem, the pool hall itself remains in the dark, so to say, leaving one's perceived notion of the association intact. From the start, Brooks does not focus on the outside ideas of what a scene may bring, but on inner reflections of what a place such as this may hold within. The opening line immediately places the youth under the romanticized idea of a billiards pool hall hustler type. And being taken from the perspective of the youths in question, there is no authority to tell them otherwise. As Gwendolyn Brooks states, it is a poem that is not meant to pass judgment, which is why it presents two ways in which the reader can interpret it. One can choose to read it as a warning of the consequences of what occurs when ignoring authority, which, in the case of the poem, leads to an early grave. Or one can choose to read it as an expression of living in the moment. Why not disobey in order to live a more joyful life if we all live short lives regardless of the rules? Neither interpretation is wrong, as the poem doesn't try to interpret the feelings for the reader, rather it provides a platform for judgment of any kind. Whether that be negative or positive is purely up to the one who is reading it. Now, what could influence the reader's perception of the poem is the environment the poem does not discuss. One reason in which Brooks may have left out any description of the setting at the Golden Shovel is because the setting that is relevant to the poem is what remains outside the pool hall, the setting of the reader. As that is what determines the meaning, whether a negative or positive reading occurs, as one's own social environment will determine the view that is held on the actions of the seven boys playing pool. One social construct of an individual may have them reading it as a warning against a hedonistic lifestyle, whereas another construct will view the poem as a warning against authority taking control of one's freedoms to enjoy life while it lasts. Whether these seven boys beat the system to live a more fulfilled life, or whether they have wasted their lives indulging in momentary vices is all dependent on setting, just not the setting of the poem itself. Now, of course, there is a lot more to be said on this poem, and I'll provide links to articles that I've read in the description below if you're interested in checking that out and wanting to continue the discussion. But for now, I hope you enjoyed this short analysis of one of Gwendolyn Brooks' most well-recited poems. And if so, be sure to hit like and subscribe, and hope to see you next week.